When beginning the assessment of a patient with suspected depression, ground your approach in the understanding that depression manifests with profound heterogeneity. Symptoms may be masked, subthreshold, or expressed primarily through somatic complaints, particularly in cultural contexts where emotional distress is somatized. Your aim is not merely to establish a diagnosis but to negotiate a collaborative, longitudinal plan for management and monitoring that integrates biological, psychological, social, and cultural factors. Start by eliciting the chief complaints and their duration, but listen beyond the words. A patient may present with fatigue, body aches, or gastrointestinal distress rather than explicit low mood. Probe gently for the emotional underpinnings of these somatic expressions. Explore the history of present illness with attention to the temporal pattern. Was the onset acute or insidious, triggered by a stressor, or seemingly spontaneous? Map the evolution of emotional symptoms like sadness, anhedonia, irritability, or anxiety. Cognitive symptoms such as poor concentration, indecisiveness, or memory lapses, behavioral changes including social withdrawal, reduced productivity, or psychomotor agitation or retardation, and somatic features like sleep disturbance, whether insomnia with early morning awakening or hypersomnia, appetite and weight changes, and loss of energy. Specifically inquire about the presence of the 3 H's, hopelessness about the future, worthlessness regarding self-concept, and helplessness about one's capacity to change circumstances, as these are potent indicators of severity and suicide risk. Next, review the past psychiatric history systematically. Have there been prior depressive episodes, and if so, what was their frequency, duration, and seasonal pattern? Screen carefully for any history of manic or hypomanic symptoms, even if brief or subtle, as this is critical to exclude bipolar disorder before initiating antidepressant therapy. Red flags for bipolar depression include early age of onset, family history of bipolar disorder, psychotic features, marked psychomotor retardation, irritability or anger as the predominant mood, reverse neurovegetative symptoms like hypersomnia and hyperphagia, and postpartum onset. Delve deeply into treatment history. For each prior medication trial, document the specific antidepressant or psychotropic, the dose achieved, the duration of the trial at therapeutic dose, and the degree of adherence. Explore reasons for non-adherence. Was it side effects, cost, stigma, or lack of perceived benefit? Document the nature of the response. Was there partial improvement, full remission, or no response at all? Note any side effects experienced, particularly those that impact quality of life or adherence, such as sexual dysfunction, weight gain, sedation, or activation. If medications were changed, understand the rationale. Was it due to inefficacy, intolerance, or a change in clinical presentation? This detailed treatment history prevents redundant trials and informs selection of next-step interventions. Obtain a thorough medical history, recognizing the bidirectional relationship between depression and medical illness. Conditions like hypothyroidism, anemia, vitamin B12 or D deficiency, chronic pain syndromes, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurological disorders, and autoimmune conditions can present with or exacerbate depressive symptoms. Screen for medications that may induce or worsen depression, including certain antihypertensives like beta blockers or rizopine, corticosteroids, hormonal agents, interferons, isotretinoin, and some anticonvulsants. Assess substance use comprehensively. Alcohol, cannabis, opioids, stimulants, and sedative hypnotics can all contribute to mood dysregulation, and withdrawal states can mimic depression. Inquire about family psychiatric history, with particular attention to mood disorders, bipolar disorder, suicide, and substance use, as these carry significant genetic and environmental risk implications. Explore the patient's personal history, including pre-morbid personality traits. Were they resilient, perfectionistic, dependent, or avoidant, as these shape coping styles and vulnerability. Assess developmental milestones, educational and occupational trajectory, and the quality of interpersonal relationships, as disruptions in these domains may reflect the functional impact of depression or serve as maintaining factors. Identify current psychosocial stressors with cultural sensitivity, financial strain, relationship conflict, bereavement, occupational pressures, migration, or discrimination may all contribute to or exacerbate depression. In the Indian context, be attuned to family dynamics, intergenerational expectations, stigma around mental illness, and the influence of traditional or spiritual healing practices. Evaluate the availability and quality of family and social support, as strong support networks are protective, while isolation or high expressed emotion can worsen prognosis. Ask about religious or spiritual beliefs, as these can be sources of meaning and resilience or, in some cases, contribute to guilt or hopelessness. Transition now to risk assessment, which is non-negotiable for every patient with depression. Begin with a direct, compassionate, and non-judgmental inquiry about suicidal ideation. Ask not only if the patient has thoughts of death or wishing to be dead, but also about active thoughts of harming themselves. Explore the frequency, intensity, duration, and controllability of these thoughts. If ideation is present, assess for planning. Has the patient thought about a specific method? How detailed is the plan? Have they taken steps toward acquiring means or rehearsing the act? Evaluate suicidal intention. What is the patient's subjective intent to die? Do they expect the act to be fatal? Is there ambivalence or a desire to be rescued? Assess the lethality of the considered method and the patient's perception of that lethality, as well as their skill or access in using the means. Inquire about past suicide attempts, noting the method, medical severity, level of intent, circumstances, and whether rescue was anticipated or accidental. Assess for non-suicidal self-harm behaviors, such as cutting or burning, as these also elevate risk for future suicide attempts. Do not omit assessment of homicidal ideation, though less common, as it requires immediate risk management if present. Systematically identify risk factors. Key predictors include severity of hopelessness, severity of depression, history of prior attempts, psychotic symptoms, and prominent anxiety or agitation, access to means, substance use, impulsivity, recent significant stressors, and the current state of social support. Equally important, document protective factors, strong connections to family, friends, or community, religious or cultural beliefs that affirm the sanctity of life, engagement in treatment and hope for improvement, future-oriented goals or responsibilities toward dependence, and effective coping skills. Based on this comprehensive evaluation, stratify risk as long-term, short-term, or imminent. This stratification directly informs clinical decision-making. Imminent risk patients, those with active intent, a specific plan, high lethality means, recent attempt, psychotic symptoms, or inability to contract for safety, typically require inpatient management. Short-term risk patients may benefit from intensive outpatient care, day programs, or very close follow-up with a robust safety plan. Long-term risk patients can often be managed in routine outpatient settings with scheduled monitoring and psychoeducation. Proceed to the examination component. Conduct a focused general physical examination, noting signs of self-neglect such as poor hygiene, unkempt appearance, or significant weight change. Record vital signs, including blood pressure and pulse, and calculate body mass index, as both underweight and overweight states can correlate with depression severity, medical comorbidity, or side effects of psychotropic medications. The mental status examination is the cornerstone of psychiatric assessment. Observe the patient's general appearance. Is grooming appropriate, or is there evidence of neglect? Note facial expressions, a downcast gaze, furrows between the eyes, the omega sign, a furrowed brow resembling the Greek letter omega seen in melancholic depression, or Verguther's fold, a drooping of the inner eyebrow. Assess motor behavior for agitation, such as hand-wringing, pacing, or inability to sit still, or for retardation, such as slowed movements, decreased gestures, or prolonged response latency. Evaluate speech for volume, rate, and tone. Depression often presents with soft, slow, monotonous speech, delayed reaction time, and scant productivity. Assess affect. Is it depressed, irritable, anxious, or labile? Note the range and reactivity. Is the affect constricted with reduced ability to brighten even to positive news? Evaluate thought stream for retardation or, less commonly, racing thoughts that might suggest bipolarity. Scrutinize thought content for hopelessness, worthlessness, helplessness, excessive or inappropriate guilt, and suicidal or homicidal ideas. Screen for psychotic symptoms, which in depression are typically mood congruent, such as delusions of guilt, poverty, or nihilism, or auditory hallucinations criticizing the patient. Their presence indicates severe depression and influences treatment setting and modality. Assess cognitive functions, attention, concentration, and memory are commonly impaired in depression, but new or persistent cognitive deficits, especially in older adults, warrant further evaluation to exclude neurodegenerative or structural causes. Evaluate insight. Does the patient recognize they have an illness and need treatment? Assess judgment, particularly regarding safety, finances, or interpersonal decisions, as impairment may necessitate greater support or supervision. If cognitive complaints are prominent, the patient is elderly, or there is concern about dementia versus pseudodementia, consider brief cognitive screening using tools like the Mini-Mental State Examination or Montreal Cognitive Assessment to differentiate depression-related cognitive dysfunction from primary neurocognitive disorders. Regarding investigations, order a complete blood count and thyroid-stimulating hormone as baseline tests for all patients, as anemia and thyroid dysfunction are common, modifiable contributors to low mood, fatigue, and cognitive symptoms. Additional tests should be guided by clinical indication. Consider vitamin B12 and folate in patients with vegetarian diets, malnutrition, or neurological symptoms, vitamin D in those with limited sun exposure, elderly patients, or bone health concerns, testosterone in men with symptoms of hypogonadism, liver and renal function tests before initiating medications with hepatic or renal metabolism or excretion, or in patients with relevant comorbidities or substance use. Reserve electrocardiography for patients with known cardiovascular disease, those over 40, or when prescribing medications that prolong the QTC interval, such as citalopram, most tricyclic antidepressants, or certain antipsychotics like ziprasidone, quetiapine, or thioridazine. Neuroimaging, whether CT or MRI, is not indicated routinely but should be considered in cases with focal neurological signs, new or progressive cognitive impairment, sudden changes in mood, behavior, or personality, or new-onset depression in late life to exclude structural lesions like tumors, metastases, or vascular events. Electroencephalography is similarly reserved for suspected seizure disorders, altered consciousness, or as a baseline before electroconvulsive therapy. Incorporate validated rating scales to quantify symptom severity, establish a baseline for monitoring, and enhance communication among treating professionals. Administer the Patient Health Questionnaire 9 for efficient screening and severity assessment in outpatient settings. Its 9th item also provides a quick screen for suicidal thoughts. For greater sensitivity to change, particularly in research, complex cases, or when evaluating treatment response, use clinician-rated scales like the Hamilton Depression Rating Scale or the Montgomery-Åsberg Depression Rating Scale. In special populations, select age-appropriate tools, the Geriatric Depression Scale for older adults, who may endorse fewer somatic items to avoid confounding with medical illness, the Children's Depression Inventory or Children's Depression Rating Scale for pediatric patients. If suicide risk is a concern, utilize the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale to structure your assessment of ideation, behavior, and intensity. Other options include Beck Scale for suicide ideation or the Suicidal Intent Scale for more detailed evaluation of intent and planning. If anxiety symptoms are prominent or a comorbid anxiety disorder is suspected, add a scale like the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7 scale or the Anxiety Subscale of the Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Scale to capture the full clinical picture. Collateral information is invaluable and often essential for an accurate assessment. With the patient's consent, obtain input from family members, caregivers, or close friends regarding the patient's symptom presentation, functional decline, risk behaviors, treatment adherence, and response to prior interventions. Family members may provide crucial observations about changes in sleep, appetite, social engagement, or expressions of hopelessness that the patient minimizes or lacks insight into. Review previous treatment records, including discharge summaries, outpatient notes, and pharmacy records, to avoid redundant medication trials, understand patterns of response and intolerance, and coordinate care effectively across settings. In cases of severe depression, psychosis, or high suicide risk, collateral may be obtained even without explicit consent if necessary to ensure patient safety, following ethical and legal guidelines. Finally, ensure thorough, clear, and clinically useful documentation. Record the diagnosis using ICD-11 or DSM-5 criteria, specifying the type of depressive disorder, current episode severity, mild, moderate, or severe, and any specifiers such as with anxious distress, with mixed features, with melancholic or atypical features, with psychotic features, in partial or full remission, or with peripartum onset. Document all identified comorbidities, both psychiatric, such as anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, or personality traits, and medical, as these influence prognosis and treatment selection. Summarize your risk assessment concisely but comprehensively. State the presence or absence of suicidal or homicidal ideation, intent, plan, and means. List key risk and protective factors, and clearly state your risk stratification with the clinical rationale. Outline a collaborative, individualized treatment plan that addresses biological, psychological, and social domains. Specify medication choices with starting doses, titration plans, and monitoring parameters. Refer for evidence-based psychotherapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, interpersonal therapy, or behavioral activation. Recommend lifestyle interventions regarding sleep hygiene, physical activity, and nutrition, and address psychosocial stressors through case management, family intervention, or community resources. Define the setting of care, outpatient, intensive outpatient, day program, or inpatient, based on severity, risk, and support. Schedule clear follow-up intervals with more frequent contact for high-risk patients. If risk is elevated, develop and document a concrete, personalized safety plan that includes recognizing warning signs, employing internal coping strategies, utilizing social supports and family members, contacting mental health professionals, and accessing emergency services if needed. Provide the patient and, with consent, family members with written copies. This comprehensive, nuanced, guideline-compliant assessment forms the essential foundation for effective, personalized, and recovery-oriented care in depression, ensuring that no critical element is overlooked and that every patient receives the thoughtful, thorough evaluation their condition deserves.